What if I told you that the greatest threat to humanity is not evil people doing evil things, but good people quietly losing the ability to think for themselves? Imagine for a moment that the most dangerous force in the world isn't malice, but the silence of those who no longer question the world around them. Picture a society where the greatest risk isn't the presence of monsters in our midst, but the subtle, creeping absence of independent thought. Consider the historian, a figure respected for wisdom and insight, who begins to promote a twisted version of history, not out of hatred, but because they have stopped questioning the narratives handed to them. Imagine a well-meaning doctor trained to heal, who prescribes harmful treatments simply because they've surrendered their critical faculties to conventional wisdom. Visualize a dedicated parent, someone who once cared deeply about their children's well-being, now making decisions that might harm them, not out of neglect, but because they've stopped asking whether it's the right thing to do. These are not the choices of villains. These are the actions of intelligent, caring individuals who have fallen prey to what Hannah Arendt called the banality of evil. According to Arendt, evil does not always come from monsters. More often, it arises from ordinary people who stop thinking critically, who fall into the comforting embrace of unexamined routine. And here's the most unsettling truth. This isn't just happening to others. It's happening to all of us. This isn't just an abstract philosophical theory. It's a living reality, unfolding around us in ways we might not even notice. It's easy to imagine that intellectual surrender is a relic of the past, a problem for history books. But it's happening every day, in quiet moments of uncritical acceptance. To understand this, let's reflect on a famous experiment from the 1950s, the Asch conformity experiment. Participants were asked to judge the length of lines on a card, a simple task. When surrounded by others who confidently gave the wrong answer, 70% of participants conformed, agreeing with the group even when their own eyes told them otherwise. In this mundane scenario, most people chose to align with the majority, even when their judgment screamed that something was wrong. This isn't just a quirk of laboratory psychology. It's a window into the fabric of human nature. The impulse to conform, to blend in, is woven deep into our collective psyche. It's not just about following the crowd. It's about being so immersed in the crowd's way of thinking that the effort required for independent thought seems unnecessary, even risky. The unsettling part is how easily this pattern repeats itself in our modern world. Social media bombards us with the opinions of others. News cycles urge us to react instantly, and echo chambers reinforce what we already believe. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, saw this clearly. He warned of the dangers of the crowd, of our tendency to lose ourselves in a collective mindset, forsaking critical thinking for the comfort of belonging. For Kierkegaard, the greatest threat was not evil people, but a world that creates the conditions where independent thought becomes rare, even suspect. But where does this banality of evil come from? How do ordinary people get caught up in it? Arendt believed it wasn't simply a failure of personal willpower. Instead, it is a systemic failure, a culture that rewards conformity, that discourages critical thinking, that makes it easier to surrender than to question. When a society values fitting in above all else, intellectual surrender flourishes. Why do people stop thinking for themselves? Why do we so often ignore inconvenient truths and go along with the majority, even when we sense deep down that something is wrong? To answer this, we need to look at the pressures of modern life. We live in an age of overwhelming information. The news cycle never stops. Social media constantly pushes us to react, to engage emotionally, rather than to think critically. Our minds are overloaded, our attention spans stretched thin. When we are tired, stressed, and overwhelmed, the path of least resistance is to accept what we're told, to go along with the group. It feels safer. It feels easier. This is precisely what Dietrich Bonhoeffer observed in Nazi Germany. Intellectuals, scientists, religious leaders, all succumbed, at least in part, to the pressure to conform. Many were educated, aware of the consequences, but they chose to follow, to ignore the moral complexities in favor of simpler, more comforting answers. Bonhoeffer realized, from his prison cell, that when people stop thinking, they become tools of dangerous ideologies, tools that do not recognize their own power to harm. The disturbing truth is that this dynamic is not just a relic of the past. It is alive and well today, even in societies that pride themselves on freedom and open debate. It happens when we let algorithms dictate what we see and think, when emotional headlines replace careful analysis, when the pressure to fit in outweighs the urge to question. This is the culture Bonhoeffer warned us about. Not one that forces us into submission, but one that makes thinking for ourselves exhausting, overwhelming, even futile. This is a form of mental surrender, a default state that we slip into sometimes without even noticing. How do we resist this tide of conformity? How do we reclaim our capacity for independent thought? Bonhoeffer believed that the antidote was something he called costly grace, the willingness to think independently, even when it is unpopular or uncomfortable. It is the courage to say, "I don't know," and the humility to seek out information that challenges our worldview. But breaking free from intellectual laziness is not easy. It does not happen overnight. We must be willing to step outside our comfort zones, to embrace discomfort, to question even our most cherished beliefs. How do we do this? How do we build the intellectual muscle to resist the distractions and pressures of modern life? First, we must embrace intellectual friction. Set aside time to engage with ideas that challenge your beliefs, not to argue, but to test whether your convictions can withstand scrutiny. Ask yourself, what evidence would it take to change my mind? If you cannot answer, it's a warning sign. Second, be deeply wary of certainty. When you feel absolutely sure about something, pause. Ask what evidence could make you reconsider. Certainty, after all, is often the handmaiden of intellectual laziness. Third, slow down. In a world of instant reactions, take a moment to think before you speak or share anything. Verify facts. Check multiple sources. Be sure you are not simply passing along a narrative that feeds your emotions, but one that aligns with truth and reason. Finally, practice the radical act of saying, "I don't know." In a world that rewards confident ignorance, admitting uncertainty opens the door to growth, learning, and real understanding. Yet, changing individual habits is not enough. We need structural changes that make critical thinking easier. This means holding social media platforms accountable for their algorithms, advocating for better media literacy education, and fostering environments where diverse perspectives are welcomed, not silenced. If we want to avoid the fate Bonhoeffer feared, we must embrace intellectual humility, seek out uncomfortable truths, and never stop questioning the world around us. Because in the end, the greatest threat to humanity is not evil itself, but the absence of thought, the quiet, collective surrender to convenience and conformity. It is up to us to fight against this, not just for ourselves, but for the future of humanity. To understand the gravity of this threat, we must delve deeper into the roots of intellectual surrender. Human beings are social creatures wired for connection and belonging. Our ancestors survived by sticking together, by aligning themselves with the group. In the ancestral environment, standing out could be dangerous. Conformity was often a matter of survival. These evolutionary pressures still shape us, even in the modern world. But the stakes are different now. In a world interconnected by technology, where information travels at the speed of light, the consequences of uncritical conformity are amplified. A single falsehood, once confined to whispers in a village square, can now echo across continents in seconds. The pressure to conform is no longer just about physical survival. It has become a matter of intellectual and moral survival. Consider the echo chambers that form online. Algorithms designed to maximize engagement feed us more of what we already believe. Our social circles, both digital and physical, reinforce our perspectives. Over time, dissenting voices grow quieter, and we become more entrenched in our views. The comfort of agreement lulls us into complacency, but history shows us the dangers of this pattern. In every era, from ancient Athens to modern democracies, societies have struggled with the tension between conformity and dissent. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, was executed for asking inconvenient questions, for challenging the status quo. His crime was not evil, but the refusal to stop thinking. The lesson is clear. Critical thought is not only a personal virtue, but a public necessity. When societies suppress dissent, when they reward conformity over curiosity, they sow the seeds of their own destruction. It is the silent, unthinking majority, not the loud, malicious few, that makes injustice possible. Think of the countless moments in history when atrocities were committed not by monsters, but by ordinary people who stopped asking questions. The bureaucrats who processed paperwork for oppressive regimes, the neighbors who looked the other way, the doctors and lawyers who followed orders rather than conscience. Each played a small part in a larger tragedy, not out of hatred, but out of habit, out of the desire to belong. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned of the dangers of what he called herd morality, the tendency for people to adopt the values and beliefs of the group without examination. For Nietzsche, true greatness lay in the ability to think for oneself, to create one's own values, rather than simply inherit them. He saw the unthinking acceptance of group norms as a form of spiritual death. But how do we cultivate this independence of mind? How do we resist the gravitational pull of the crowd? It begins with curiosity, the willingness to ask why, even when everyone else has accepted because. It requires courage, the strength to stand apart, even when standing apart is uncomfortable or dangerous. And it demands humility, the recognition that our own perspective is limited, that we might be wrong. Curiosity is the engine of critical thought. It propels us beyond the boundaries of what is familiar into the unknown. When we nurture curiosity, we become less susceptible to dogma, less likely to accept easy answers. We learn to see the world not as a fixed set of truths, but as a landscape of questions waiting to be explored. Courage is the shield that protects us from the pressure to conform. It gives us the strength to speak up, to express dissent, even in the face of opposition. Courage does not mean the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite fear. It is the backbone of every movement for justice, every revolution of the mind. Humility is the compass that guides us through uncertainty. It reminds us that our knowledge is always incomplete, that there is always more to learn. Humility opens us to the possibility of change, to the wisdom of others, to the depth of our own ignorance. Together, curiosity, courage, and humility form the foundation of intellectual independence. They are the antidotes to the banality of evil, the virtues that enable us to resist the siren song of conformity. But these virtues must be cultivated, both individually and collectively. We need educational systems that value questioning over rote memorization, that reward creativity over compliance. We need workplaces that encourage dissent, that see disagreement as a sign of strength, not weakness. We need communities that celebrate diversity of thought, that welcome difference rather than fear it. We must also recognize the role of power in shaping thought. Those in positions of authority, politicians, media figures, corporate leaders, have a responsibility to foster environments where critical thinking can thrive. When leaders discourage questioning, when they punish dissent, they do more than stifle debate. They erode the very foundations of democracy. The philosopher John Stuart Mill argued that the health of a society depends on the free exchange of ideas. Only through open debate, through the clash of differing perspectives, can truth emerge. When voices are silenced, when questions are forbidden, society stagnates. But the responsibility does not lie with leaders alone. Each of us has a role to play. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice critical thought, to listen deeply, to question assumptions. Every online interaction is a chance to resist the pull of the echo chamber, to seek out new perspectives. This is not always easy. It can be uncomfortable, even painful, to confront ideas that challenge our worldview. It takes effort to seek out information that contradicts what we already believe. It requires discipline to slow down, to think before reacting, to verify before sharing. But the alternative is far more dangerous. When we surrender our capacity to think, we become vulnerable to manipulation. We become easy prey for those who seek to control, to divide, to exploit. We become, in Arendt's words, the unwitting agents of evil, not through malice, but through thoughtlessness. In the end, the battle for independent thought is a battle for our humanity. It is a struggle to remain awake, aware, and engaged in a world that constantly tempts us to drift into complacency. The stakes could not be higher. Our future depends on our ability to think for ourselves, to question the narratives that surround us, to resist the easy allure of conformity. It depends on our willingness to embrace uncertainty, to seek out truth, to cultivate the virtues of curiosity, courage, and humility. We must remember that critical thought is not a luxury, but a necessity. It is the bedrock of freedom, the guardian of justice, the engine of progress. Without it, we are at the mercy of those who would lead us astray. So let us commit, individually and collectively, to resist the banality of evil. Let us refuse to surrender our minds to the pressures of conformity. Let us seek out the difficult questions, the uncomfortable truths, the challenging perspectives. Let us remember that the greatest threat to humanity is not evil itself, but the absence of thought, the silence of those who no longer question the world around them. Let us break that silence. Let us think, speak, and act with the conviction that our minds matter. Because in the end, the future depends not on the actions of a few, but on the choices of the many. It depends on our willingness to remain awake, to stay curious, to be brave. It depends on our refusal to stop thinking. And so, as we move forward into an uncertain future, let us carry with us the wisdom of those who came before, the philosophers, the dissenters, the questioners. Let us remember their courage, their humility, their relentless pursuit of truth. Let us honor their legacy not with empty words, but with living thought. Let us become, in our own time, the thinkers, the questioners, the guardians of humanity's future. For the greatest threat to humanity is not evil, but the absence of thought. And the greatest act of resistance is to never, ever stop thinking. As you reflect on this, consider the small moments in your own life when you have felt the pull of conformity. The times you held back a question for fear of seeming ignorant. The moments you nodded along, even when your gut told you something was wrong. The conversations you avoided because disagreement felt uncomfortable. These moments are not failures, but opportunities. Opportunities to notice the subtle forces that shape your thinking, to become aware of the habits that lead to intellectual surrender. Each time you choose to ask, to challenge, to reconsider, you take a step towards reclaiming your independence of mind. It is in these small acts of courage that the future is shaped. Not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, persistent refusal to stop thinking. In the willingness to be uncomfortable, to be uncertain, to be wrong. Every time you pause before sharing a sensational headline, every time you seek out a perspective different from your own, every time you admit, "I don't know," you are resisting the tide of conformity. You are strengthening the muscles of critical thought, building the resilience needed to navigate a complex and uncertain world. And as you do this, you inspire others. Your example becomes a beacon for those around you, a reminder that independent thought is possible, that it is valuable, that it is worth the effort. In this way, the fight against the banality of evil is not a solitary struggle. It is a collective endeavor, a shared commitment to keep questioning, to keep thinking, to keep growing. So let us move forward with intention. Let us embrace the discomfort of uncertainty, the challenge of dissent, the discipline of curiosity. Let us build communities that value questioning over compliance, that celebrate diversity of thought over uniformity. Let us hold our leaders, our institutions, and ourselves accountable for fostering environments where critical thinking can thrive. Let us remember that the future is not fixed, but shaped by the choices we make, by our willingness to think for ourselves, to resist the easy path of conformity, to seek out truth, even when it is inconvenient. Because the greatest threat to humanity is not evil itself, but the quiet, collective surrender to unthinking routine. And the greatest hope lies in our refusal to stop asking, to stop seeking, to stop thinking. Let us then be the ones who remember. Let us be the ones who think. And in that act of remembrance, in that commitment to thinking, we will find the hope, the strength, and the wisdom to build a better future for ourselves and for all of humanity.
If this video bent your mind, share your thoughts in the comments, like and share with your fellow philosophers. If you want to explore more mind benders, hit that subscribe button